Welcome everyone who's slowly joining. We're just going to give it a few minutes and wait for other people to join. Right now, everyone is muted. If you have any questions, you can send them directly to me in private chat. You can only message with me directly. You can also raise your hand when we get later into the meeting if you have questions or want to make comments. Thank you everyone for being here as well.
Okay. Should we wait till about, I think it's 6:02 now. Should we get started about 6:04? Just I know some people need a little extra time for the technology to get it.
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
Okay.
Yeah, that was Bibi who just called. She said she's attempting to log on and should be here momentarily.
Great.
There you go. All right, well, maybe we'll just go ahead and get started so we don't hold everyone up too much. And Bibi will join hopefully in just a moment. My name's Ben Geffen. I'm filling in tonight for Rhonda Klein, who is the chair of the Police Advisory Commission. And I thank everybody for attending this virtual meeting tonight. And if we can just begin, I'd like to just recognize the Police Advisory Commission members who are present tonight. Because normally we'd go down the table and have everyone introduce him or herself. I'm not sure. Danny, can you unmute folks briefly, the PAC members, so they can say a brief word? And I'll just start. I'm Ben Geffen, one of the vice chairs of the commission, and I am, in my day job, an attorney at the Public Interest Law Center here in Philadelphia. Next, we hear from Sean.
Yes. Hi. My name is Sean Ali Long, and I am a Temple University student studying P-Law.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
George Mosey.
Hold on one second, George. Hasn't muted you yet. There you go. All right, you're
All right. I'm George Mosey. I'm the executive director of the Philadelphia Anti-Drug, Anti-Violence Network.
Thanks. Michael.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Michael Warman. I am happy to be here virtually this evening. Aside from the Police Advisory Commission, I'm a strategic researcher and data analyst for the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers.
Thank you. And Sarah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Young. I'm a community development and policy consultant.
Thanks. And if staff can introduce themselves too, beginning with Hans.
Hey, sorry, I didn't know that once I muted myself, I couldn't unmute myself, so apologies. Hi, I'm Hans Manos. I'm the Executive Director of the Police Advisory Commission. If it's useful, I can introduce the staff so we can
Great.
time. So joining us today is Anthony Arachi, our Deputy Executive Director and knower of all things. Talia Grimmage is also on the call. Anastasia McCarthy is here joining us. And Angelica Hendricks is here joining us. The three folks there are our policy analysts. Janine Zajac is our fourth policy analyst, unable to join us this evening. Danny Guy is on the call as well. And Danny is the administrative assistant at the back, and generally handles everything. So thank you all for joining us tonight.
Thank you. So next on the agenda is the chair's report. As I said, our usual chair unfortunately can't be here tonight, but I'm filling in. And I don't think that I need to take much time other than just to extend gratitude for the work of all the staff and what is for everybody a particularly challenging time. So we're just all grateful to the hardworking staff of the Police Advisory Commission for continuing to push things along full speed in spite of the circumstances. And so I would like to hand it over to Hans to give his executive director's update.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you for the kind words. I want to echo those. My first item here is that the PAC has continued to operate really well during these social distancing and stay-at-home orders. I've been impressed about how seamless that has been. Our complaints have continued to be taken via video conference or phone conference. We've adapted by responding to several different incidents that are COVID specific. That included folks who were feeling as if the police response was no longer to protect them, and helping them understand what the protocols were, and helping people understand the uglier side of COVID as it related to some of the bias incidents that came out of that, and develop strategies to respond to that with our city partners. So I've been really proud of that. And that's to say nothing of the fact that some of the ongoing projects didn't miss the beat. So some of the policy and protocols and event reviews that are ongoing and are tedious and take time have continued, and we have continued to communicate via video conference and via phone using technology the way that it's designed to really help us make sure that we can mimic what we do in the office. Huddle a lot, have a lot of conversations, a lot of strategy conversations, a lot of philosophical conversations, and continue to do that in a face-to-face manner and understand what each of our struggles are internally as staff and what we can do to support each other. So I've been very proud of the staff. In keeping with that theme, we met recently on April 30th with the police department via video conference. It was a large meeting, as large as it might have been if we were in person. Several senior commanders, including the commissioner and her senior team, to deliver Angelica's report, and Angelica delivered the report on data-driven strategies to prevent gun violence. It's a conversation on civil liberties that the PAC drafted, and that presentation went very well. Angelica, as all of you have seen firsthand, delivered the presentation excellently and impressed everybody in the room, and myself included, and her colleagues. And as a result, the report was received as intended, which is to be helpful guidance to the police department, not to be critical or to be unfairly critical. And I believe that we are anticipating a response from the police department on June 15th. As I mentioned, the report was presented on April 30th. It was delivered about 3 weeks before that, but because of COVID, we couldn't present right away. And we felt that the most fair thing to do, both for the PAC and for the police department, was to allow for a 45-day time period after we presented the report, as opposed to a 45-day time period after we emailed the report. So that's how we handled that, and we're anticipating a June 15th response date. Of course, as I noted, this is delivered during the pandemic, so we are amenable to a clear extension of that deadline. So if they ask for a certain date after that, we have the right and the opportunity to say no, but I think we'll consider it as a commission when that request comes in. Many of you know now, if you know already, I'll tell you now, the PAC has received an 18% budget decrease. That budget decrease was painful, and it's painful for any organization, but it's particularly tough on a small organization like ourselves, and particularly tough on a small organization that spends most of their money on staff. So what ultimately had to occur was that we had to lose 2 staff positions that were filled. So we had to lay 2 people off. One person ultimately is retiring early. Another person was laid off and they're nowhere near retirement age. And unfortunately, there's also a third person that was assigned to the PAC, but for a variety of reasons was not actually under the PAC's budget. So that person was under the MDO budget. Their position was eliminated under the MDO budget. So our effective net loss of staff is not represented only by the 18% budget, but by the cut from that area of the city as well. So we lost 3 staff members, 1 analyst, 1 investigator, and our social media public affairs specialist. Very difficult, but you know, and I have a lot of opinions, but ultimately it was caused by the budget shortfall from COVID. Moving on, the PAC is currently working on several policy collaborations with the police department. Under the new administration, new police administration, there seems to be more willingness to engage the PAC on the front end, which I'm very excited about. We are obviously still ironing that out. As the folks say, we are building the plan as we fly it. So we are attempting to understand what that collaboration looks like, and what things like, for instance, disagreement might look like. Let's say we disagree on something. How do we, if we can't overcome it, how do we document that, and how do we make that clear for the sake of both organizations? So things like that need to be ironed out and straightened out. I think we have good partners at the police department, and we're looking forward to developing not only some good policy recommendations with them, but simultaneously developing a process whereby we can make these recommendations and have a clear guidelines on what to do and what collaboration looks like based on each organization. So we're really looking forward to that. Besides that, the PAC has continued to focus on some of the racial equity work within the city. We're excited about the role that Nefertiri Sikut, who is the new incoming Chief Diversity Officer, is bringing to the city. It's been an interesting conversation to watch her strategize and plan around COVID, and also to seek the PAC's input on other equity issues that exist in the city that touch on policing or directly related to policing. So that's been ongoing work, and we're very excited about it. And besides that, obviously, I regularly have been updating you all on our progress as relates to the Plainview project. That has ebbed and flowed in terms of flow of information. We are, I think, firmly at an ebb right now in terms of what the city is willing to offer us in terms of information and access to decision makers around this project. So we will develop a plan around that and determine what our report can and look like based on that. But later this evening, we did receive communication from the city that they were unlikely or unwilling to release information to the PAC at this time. So that's where we are on that, and I can provide you all with that letter if that's necessary. So so I thank you all for that. If there's any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Hans. That's a tough update, especially about the staff layoffs. And you know, I think our heart goes out to you and to the whole staff, current and unfortunately the folks who've been laid off for the, you know, the challenges that these tough times present. And it's a big loss for the commission and for the city. I want to turn to new business on the agenda, and first, believe that George Mosey has something to share with us.
Yeah, thanks very much for giving me an opportunity to give you an update on the Community Crisis Intervention Program. You know, like Hans, like the commission, PAN has had to take a cut. You know, when the city loses almost $500 million in revenue, all the programs are going to take a hit. And so PAN lost one of its prize programs, the Youth Violence Reduction Partnership, as a result of about a $2 million cut to our budget. But the Community Crisis Intervention Program continues. It was actually cited by the mayor early on as one of the essential programs in the city of Philadelphia, and we therefore continued even in the midst of the stay-at-home order. The way the Community Crisis Intervention Program works is we employ credible messengers. And these are people who are credible in the community because they've lived lives that are consistent with the lives of the people that they're trying to reach. One of the interesting things about our program, in the sense that it is a credible messenger program, and those kinds of programs exist throughout the country, what distinguishes us is that we actually look to interact with the police, to collaborate with the police. And that's particularly relevant to this venue. We reach out to the police and share information with them, and they share information with us. At this point, so that I can maintain some semblance of me being one of those credible messenger programs, we don't share the information to make arrests, to help with investigations, to secure prosecutions. We share information so that we can prevent crime. We're very interested in engaging in mediation with the would-be perpetrators. And so before we can do that, we have to know who they are. And we get information based on police intelligence. We work closely with the Delaware Valley Intelligence Center, the DIVIC here in Philadelphia. They provide information on people who are on the peripheral, people who seem to be about to take that last step into criminal conduct, actually perpetrating an act of violence, or people who are suspects. And if they haven't been caught yet, then hopefully we can mediate, intervene, develop a relationship that keeps them from taking that next step. We consistently communicate with district captains. The way we work is geographically based. We're in every area of the city that has been hit hard by violence. And with the roadmap for a safer Philadelphia, those areas are even better defined. In fact, they're referred to as pinpoint areas. So we have people who patrol the pinpoint areas, develop relationships with people who are suspected of committing crimes, and the people in the neighborhood who are either part of the viable leadership or just people in the neighborhood. And I like to take the opportunity whenever I can to say that even in the neighborhoods that are hit hardest by violence, the vast majority of the people are people who would look for a peaceful solution, who want to have a peaceful alternative, who will support that and who will work to achieve that if they're provided the resources to do so. And so that's a big part of our strategy. Not just looking for the people who might pick up a gun and use it, but also looking for the people who don't want to have to dodge bullets. And we develop relationships with all of them and then bring the resources to bear. A recent innovation here at PAN was the development of a human services department. And that human services department is designed to do just that, find resources, make sure that the community crisis intervention folks are educated about the resources and that they're able to bring those to the community that needs the most. At PAN here, we have a saying that sometimes it takes an extremely long arm with a helping hand attached to it to actually get people the help that they need. So we're out there and we're ready to hold hands, which means that we're not just going to give you the information, but then we're going to take you where it is you need to go. We're going to hold your hand and walk you through the process. Some people are frowning at me right now because of the pandemic, and they're saying, well, George, you can't hold hands anymore. And you can imagine the obstacle that social distancing has presented for my people when our goal is to develop relationships. You know, sometimes when you're doing that with the population that we're trying to reach, you can't shout it to the hills, you have to whisper it. And now we're trying to communicate what used to be conveyed in a whisper 6 feet away and behind a mask. But we're still doing that. So at this point, the hand holding may be more symbolic, but we're there to take people where they need to go, and we stick with them. So even after somebody gets into a job training program or after somebody, in fact, gets a job, we have case managers who are part of that human services department who continue on with them to make sure that they're getting everything that they need to maintain the employment, to find the job after completing the job training. It's not a one and done proposition. And again, talking about and emphasizing our relationship with the police department and how that looks. One of the really great opportunities for us to collaborate with the police is when they give us information about young people who they believe are on the verge, as I said, of taking that step into overt criminality. We call it a captain's list because it's actually conveyed to us by the captains. We get the address and that's about it. A photograph, and we go out there and we try to find that person. And you can imagine how much finesse has to be employed when, without an introduction, without a triggering event, and I should probably find a better way to describe it than a triggering event when we're talking about violence prevention, but without something that happened that would at least make it make sense to that person that, okay, now people are going to be focusing on me. We sort of just show up out of the blue, knock on their door and say, we'd like to speak to, you know, this young person. And surprisingly, once we have the opportunity to explain why we're there, that we're not part of probation, that we're not, you know, from the police, but we're there simply because we heard that this person could use some help. And we talk about the resources that we have, and we use the magic 3-letter word job, and doors open, and people are willing to have a discourse with us. And we've in fact been able to develop relationships with those young people. And that's where, you know, that credibility that's built into each and every one of my community crisis intervention program people really comes in handy. They have more to talk about than just what it takes to get a job. They can actually talk about why it is that it's been so tough for them to get a job in the first place. They know firsthand what the obstacles have been. And we found that, you know, that ability to show real empathy has opened the doors and created a situation where we have in fact had some success. So, you know, we continue to be out there. We're expanding. Back in July of 2018, when we started, we began with 9 people. If things go well by the end of this fiscal year, I'll have 64 people in place. And those 64 people will be patrolling throughout the city. I have 2 shifts now. One works from 12 to 8, Monday through Friday, and the other works Thursdays and Fridays from 6 o'clock in the evening to 4 o'clock in the morning, on Saturdays from 3 o'clock in the afternoon to 1 o'clock in the morning, and Sundays from 3 o'clock in the afternoon to midnight. You know, those times help us to cover the times when violence is most prevalent. They also help us to cover the times when people are most available, most accessible. And so with the added resources and the emphasis that this program has received from just about every area in city government, as well as in the community, we're doing our best to publicize who it is that we are so that people will recognize us and know who it is that's, you know, knocking on their door, if that's the fact of the matter. Well, we're hoping that we can really make a dent and make a difference in the occurrence of violence in the city of Philadelphia.
George, we have a question for you. Someone asked, do you know if the captain's list, if the people who are put on it are notified when they're put on the list? And do you know what the criteria is for when they get placed on the list?
Yeah, so they are not notified, and that's what I mean when I say we just sort of show up out of the blue. There's no forewarning for these people, and there's no triggering event, which goes to the second part of the question, what the criteria is. Often it's as a result of them having had police contact. They were arrested, or they were present when somebody else was arrested. And, you know, there are people who communicate with the police. There's information that's provided about who's doing what. Sometimes that information doesn't mean that somebody is actually committing an offense, a crime, but it can mean that they're part of a group that has that predisposition. That's how you get on the list, and that's how you're brought to our attention. Now, as I said, not everybody is on the list because of those peripheral reasons. Some people are on the list because they have, in fact, committed an overt act. Maybe they just got out of jail. You know, sometimes there are old beefs, you know, that people want to settle. And no matter that you were away for 5 years, when you get out, they're going to want to settle the score. And that's where we come in. We can meet with them early on, figure out what we can do to mediate, figure out what we can do in some cases to facilitate keeping that person out of the way. By the way, that's the vernacular now. If somebody says they're in the way, they're not talking about, you know, blocking your path. That means that they're a part of the criminal culture.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation, George.
Yeah,
I just want to, before we move along in the agenda, recognize that Bilal Qayyum, another member of the commission, appears to have joined the meeting. So welcome, Bilal. George, I just want to say also, I've gotten to know George's organization through some other work that he and I both been involved on outside of PAC's work, and they do a tremendous job and really make a huge difference in the city. So I appreciate hearing that update. And again, I'm sorry to hear about the budget cuts that have affected your organization as well. I believe next we have Corporal Beard available to present. Hello.
Hello. Hello. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm from the Philadelphia Police Department, and today, or this month, is Mental Health Awareness, and I'm gonna speak about that, Mental Health Awareness Month. So I wanna say to each and everyone, happy Mental Health Awareness Month. Mental health is about well-being, and I'm specifically gonna speak about police well-being. When we think about mental health,
I just shared the presentation. Can you see, can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Okay. And when we speak about mental health, most people would put their hand, you know, their finger around their temple, or say people's elevators don't, you know, that person's elevators isn't going to the top floor. And I want to be intentional to say labels are for food and clothes and not for people. So when we see people having mental health issues, we want to make sure that we don't place labels on them. I'm going to do a brief introduction of myself. Again, my name is Lena Beard. I'm the corporal at the Philadelphia Police Department, EAP. We're located at 1341 North Delaware Avenue. I have been in the police department and still am in the police department for 27 years. I first started in the 12th district, and I stayed there for 9 years, and I got promoted to corporal. And I went to the 14th district, and I stayed there for 5 years, and then I got transferred to EAP. It has been a journey because being at EAP, I was listening to officer stories, to anyone story that came in, and I felt like I was ill-equipped in listening to their stories. So I went to school, and I got my associates from community college, and then I got a dual degree in psych and social work from LaSalle. So I enjoy my role. I have a dual role at EAP where I am the supervisor, so that it was really important for me to obtain that education so that I can supervise my unit and really talk about the different facilities and the different people that come to our unit to offer, their services, that I understand what they're presenting to us, and will it be beneficial to the members of the police department and beneficial for us. And our motto is cops helping cops. And being in the police department for 27 years, I've seen a lot. So I'm able to speak to other officers about my experience to normalize some of the things that we see on the street. Our job at EAP is to assess and refer. And that's important because when we assess, we're able to use active listening, empathetic listening, reflective listening, different techniques to meet our clients where they are, and to hold alliances with them and to listen so that we're able to refer them, whether that's to speak to their captain, go to the FOP, go to, LEHB, tap into their insurance, tap into whatever they need to put them on the road for wellness. And our services are confidential. And that's really important because confidentiality, you don't want to tell other people business. And we want to be able to kind of stay under the radar and to help officers where they need that additional support to move through, to be, an optimal employee. And the referrals that officers can come by self-referral, they can come on their own. Their supervisors, they can go to their supervisors and say, I would like to speak with someone at EAP. They don't have to specifically tell their supervisor, but their supervisor can call and make an appointment. Or if their supervisor sees behaviors that they feel as though that the officer is not at that optimal level, or something's affecting them, they saw something on the street that is affecting them, that they're able to say, you know what, I'm gonna make an appointment for EAP, just talk about it and then come back. The department has mandatory referrals, and that's if officer is involved in a shooting, if they're under investigation, if they return from the military. We want to make sure that officers are transitioning back to the police department properly. And if they have a PFA, which can, affect how they do their job, because police stress, it's real, it's tactile for us as officers, because it's okay not to be okay with the things that officers deal with on the street. And then they have to couple that with their personal lives. they need the support that they need through EAP. The repeated exposure of being on the street. One day you're picking up a dead body. The next day you're dealing with an infant situation. The next day you're dealing with a fatal car accident, dismemberment, body parts strewn all over the place. That there leaves an indelible mark on our memories. And we have to now put the uniform back on our human bodies and now respond, now still be, whole and professional to the community. So one thing that EAP, we want to talk about, stress recovery and coping skills and coping strategies on how to deal with these things that we see and that we go through. And not only that, but the things we deal with in our personal lives. The divorce rate is high in police marriages, relationships, chemical dependency, cheating. These things happen, and they happen to normal people, but when they happen to officers and dealing with the external stress and then the internal stress, it becomes a lot. So one thing that, at EAP, we want to be able to unpack people's stuff very, very strategically. And we want to talk about stress recovery and how to stress manage, how to, when you put that uniform on, that human body, how now do you keep yourself safe? There's so many things that officers deal with, and the chronic stress and just with the officers who work last out, fatigue, and the different things that they deal with. We want to talk about self-care and making that practical. Self-care should be very practical. And I'm very intentional about talking to each and every officer that crosses the threshold of my unit about self-care, because we all should be able to balance our work life and our personal lives. And when we take the uniform off, we should be exercising, journaling, making sure that we have a sleep pattern, watching our alcohol intake. If you have a spiritual community, be able to pray, to meditate, but most importantly, have a support strategy. And that's what EAP is. It's a support system. And if an officer doesn't want to come to EAP, we also have other resources. They can call and we can give them other resources to utilize. We partner with Penn Behavioral Health. That's our external EAP. We can call the FOP and LEHB. So FOP is our Fraternal Order of Police. That's our union. LEHB is our law enforcement health benefits, where if they want to tap into getting a counselor, grief counseling, marriage counseling, any type of counseling that they need, they can tap into those resources to get the help or to get them that balance. And when they come to EAP, we are intentional in calming everything down and finding out what it is that that officer specifically need. Most of the time, officers come to our unit, they're overwhelmed. There's so many things going on. And usually it's part work and part home stress. But a lot of times it's the home stress that really propels them into seeking help for themselves. So we are, I'm just so happy to be a part of EAP. I love the work. I love talking with officers and their families. And the services are for officers and their families, any police department employee, that includes school crossing guards, corrections officers, because there's corrections officers in our PDU. That's our police detention unit. and civilians, whether they work inside the district or whether they work inside the police headquarters. So that's what we do. Do I have any questions?
BB's muted.
Oh, let me. You should be unmuted now, BB.
She's still muted.
How about now?
Yeah.
Okay. Here's my question. I would think that the records ordinarily would be subject to HIPAA and very private, but in litigation, if your department is subpoenaed, are those records admissible in litigation at all?
Yes, they are. I had recently had to go to court, and what I did was had the officer sign a consent that I can release their records, but more than likely the officer initiates the litigation. So the officer can get their notes themselves, or I have them sign for release.
Okay, so in the absence though, in the absence of an officer signing a release where he or she might believe they're beneficial to the litigation, if the records are not released by the officer, but there's a subpoena or a court order,
yes,
are they admissible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, they are.
Is that an impediment to officers seeking help or treatment? The possibility that the records could be released at some future time?
No. Because one thing that we do talk about is that we do have to do notes, and most of the time our notes aren't detailed where everything that they speak about is, is written down. We usually summarize or paraphrase. So
got it.
Yes.
Thank you. That was helpful.
Yes, thank you. Any more questions?
Looks like we have a question down here from
I think Talia has a question.
Talia, did you have a question?
I just unmuted her.
Yes, I do. Corporal Beard, thank you for your presentation.
Yes.
I have a question. Do you know if there are any sort of wellness resources in place beyond EAP if, officers choose not to use the EAP unit? What do you have available that's outside of PPD?
Yes. So what's available outside of the police department is the external EAP, which is Penn Behavioral Health. Mm-hmm. They can tap right into that, call the number, and get resources that way. They can also go through to LEHB, which is our law enforcement health benefits, which will take them right into their benefits, and they can utilize that, especially if they're looking for something specific. If an officer wants a Black female therapist, or a child therapist specifically, they would want to go that route. Also, if they want to go through our Fraternal Order of Police, they have different resources, support groups, so that officers can utilize those.
Looks like Bilal had a question.
Yes. Do you have the ability to recommend, after you talk to an officer, that he should get services? And if he refuses, that there's action that can be taken?
That's a great question. We strongly suggest we do leave some autonomy to the officer. There is no repercussion for them to not take the services, because we want to have them have that autonomy. But however, if it's an alcohol issue and they're about to lose their job and they don't take the resources, eventually they will lose their job because they didn't address the issue at, when it was at it, right, at the time that they could have. I'll say it that way.
Yeah, yes, that's the reason why for years I've been advocating that, and this is a political position, but I've been advocating that there needs to be in the city's contract with the police that every 2 years, every officer needs to be evaluated for psychological, because my understanding is there is a psych test before you get on, but once you're on, you don't have to
do it no more, right?
And I know I'm glad everything you're saying. My work over the years has shown that a lot of officers are totally under stress, and all those issues that you laid out about every day they're seeing bodies, they're seeing kids are molested and all that, they're under stress. So I think it needs to be, once again, mandatory that every officer be required. And I'm saying every 2 years a psych test, and that's been. I recommended that to 3 commissioners, and FOP is aware of it, and in the contract negotiation with the city, it always squashed. And I understand why, because they're afraid that the membership, they would lose memberships, or they would lose officers and lose jobs, and that's their job, to make sure the officers stay on their job. So, and my last question to that. Have you, since you've been in this role, and I'm glad that you're on this tonight, and I give you big kudos for doing the work you're doing.
Thank you, sir.
But since you've been on this position, have you recommended that an officer be removed?
Well, we don't do fitness for duty. So if we find that an officer is at a higher level of care and they need to be removed, what we're going to do is, there's a captain in our unit. So I am a 3rd string supervisor. I'm a corporal. So there's a captain, there's a sergeant, there's myself, and there's 5 other officers and a civilian. So what I would do is I would talk to my captain and have him then talk to that officer's captain, where now they need to call 19th and Fairmount, where 19th and Fairmount would do the fitness for duty status. And they would have to do the paperwork to then facilitate that process.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sean, you had a question? You're unmuted now.
Oh, once again, great presentation.
Thank you.
But going off below, what if you assess the officer and he have, and I'm just being honest. You find out that he has some biases.
Okay.
Because of the color of the skin. In your 13 years being in that unit, have you ever assessed any officers like that?
That's an interesting question, because we all have biases. I know that for instance, when white officers get involved in shootings, the issue of Black Lives Matter coming to their home protesting was a big situation. And a lot of white officers felt as though that they're not racist. So when we look at that, we know that implicit biases exist. We know that explicit biases exist, but how do you now manage that within the police culture? And when training kicks in or threat assessment kicks in, is that a bias? So it's the totality of the circumstances. I am not able to assess a bias, but however, with talking with people, you hear different things, you hear certain things, and you
that's where I am to talk about. Like, well, when you talk to them, right? Can you hear like the way that they to target? Okay, this officer has some racial intent that is not good. So, do you recommend him one go back to training, or what do you do then?
well, we discuss it. I'm not able to recommend someone to go to training because we're EAP, we're a support service. So what I will do is I will discuss it and find out what's going on or what's behind that thinking. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Corporal Beard, I'm wondering, are there any police actions that immediately trigger, against George is right, I got to find a better word, immediately call for an EAP evaluation or contact?
So we wouldn't call it an evaluation. We would just call it we do assessment. So what would mitigate that happening is usually one of two things. If a supervisor feels that the officer needs the services, for instance, if he hears that he or she hears that the officer is going through divorce and they see that the officer is withdrawn and their uniform is slovenly, it's a numerous amount of behavioral cues that are happening, and he sees these things happening, then they'll sit down and talk with the officer, find out what's happening and say, listen, I would like to send you to EAP. Why don't you, do that? Or an officer is going through something at work and says to the supervisor, listen, I'm going through something, whether that's work-related, personal, I would like to go to EAP. Thirdly, if the officer is having a domestic and they say, let me call EAP for myself and talk with someone so that I won't lose my job or so that I won't, mess up my career, then they're able to facilitate it those ways.
So I guess part of what I'm wondering is, are there things like, so for instance, let me give an example.
Yes.
If someone discharges their firearm or is a part of responds to a very severe incident of child abuse.
Yes.
Are those types of police actions, kind of the more traumatizing ones, do they require EAP to do an assessment, or is that still the supervisor's referral?
No. Now that's the mandatory referral for the department. So the mandatory referral would be for the shooting. Any traumatic incident of that nature, then what will happen is the commander will call EAP out to that scene for us to then talk to officers at the scene. And if an officer says, listen, I would like to further talk about this, then we schedule them in to come into the office.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Angelica has a question.
Hi, thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you.
I have a question. For EAP, are you all, mandatory reporters as well, just as like any other therapist? So if you feel like your patient may be in danger of hurting other people or themselves, do you report that?
Yes, ma'am. Because we wear dual hats, because we're peer counselors and police officers, we have to, you know, automatically report any child abuse, elder abuse. We'll handle the suicidal ideation. If an officer says they want to harm themselves, the one thing that we do before an officer even comes into our office, we lock, they have to lock their guns up. So it's easier to take a key than a gun. So we take the key, we then, we have a unit car, we will transport that officer to Friends, Brook Glen, Hall Mercer, Belmont, wherever we need to transport that officer so that they can be safe. And if it's a homicidal situation, we will then notify the intended targets, and then we will, then that's why we have a captain, and then we'll make all the notifications from there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Not sure we have any other questions, but I want to thank you, Corporal Beard, for your presentation. Sorry, I have a 6-year-old running around during this meeting.
Okay.
So thank you so much. And
you're welcome.
And finally, the last item on our presentation agenda here is from Talia Grimmage.
Hi there, greetings pet community. So I would like to share a project with you surrounding small businesses. Okay, so most of us know in mid-March, in tandem with the city's enhanced pandemic protocols, PPD modified several of their own policies. Among them were changes to the manner in which arrests will be made for certain nonviolent offenses. In those instances, instead of arresting the individual and transporting them to a PPD facility as they had traditionally done, the individual will be cited and arrested at a later date after the pandemic. Retail theft was one of the offenses that was affected by the modified policy. Many small business owners who operated essential businesses began to see an uptick in shoplifting. In April, you may have seen this, Channel 6 aired a segment with a few local business owners who really talked about how frustrated they were with the modified policy, which had led to staff resignations, people were worried about safety, and they even showed a video and spoke about the brazen way some residents were just walking into their store and just filling up a bag and, you know, telling the clerk about the policy, walking out and sort of, you know, daring the clerk to do anything about it. One of the most vocal business owners in the segment was the owner of the 7-Eleven at 22nd and Market. Excuse me. So obviously we all know the COVID-19 guidelines, they've evolved day to day. So PPD had to address safety concerns right away. However, you know, prior to implementing the modified policy, it would have been beneficial, you know, for the department to sort of include some community stakeholders and business owners in the decision, because business owners could have been made aware of the policy ahead of time. They would have known it was going to change, and then they could have possibly provided some insight to the department about how those modifications would have affected their business. In May, PPD released Commissioner Outlaw's statement, which provided further context to the modified policy, and it also rescinded the previous nonviolent arrest policy as it pertained to a few things: burglary, theft from auto, and retail theft as well. So although PPD had decided to rescind the policy, we believe there was still an opportunity to speak directly to the community and business owners about how their businesses were affected. So in response, PAC created a flyer that was aimed at small local businesses. And the flyer, you can see it on the screen here, it had two purposes. So one side of the flyer acknowledged, that PAC was aware of the frustration of the community and invited them to our next community meeting to share their experiences if they wished. And the other side informed them that the policy had been changed. So we distributed the flyer to a few small business associations and asked them to share it with their members. And then we personally went to the 7-Eleven at 22nd and Market to let them know the policy had been changed, talk to them a little bit, and provide them with the flyer as well. And our goal was to do our best to inform the public and to prevent shop owners from feeling like they had to handle retail theft themselves because they believe PPD wouldn't respond if they called. So if anyone has any questions or comments.
First, let me say that Talia is being very modest when she said we did this. I think this is absolutely a project that she identified a solution for, addressed with the shop owners directly, and tried to be responsive to community members all on her own. It was very impressive, and I thank you very much for being so proactive and so thoughtful about this process, and for creating this this communication that we're able to send out to folks to address a lot of their concerns. Obviously not all of their concerns, but just a lot of their concerns. So, thank you very, very much, Talia, for working on this, and absolutely all my kudos for being just so thoughtful and proactive on this topic. Are there any questions?
Bilal, you had a question?
Yes. Have you worked with the Commerce Department on this project? Hello?
Talia is muted right now, so I'm not sure.
I just unmuted her, I think.
Hi, Bilal. No, we didn't work with the Commerce Department.
Well, I would make a recommendation that you reach the Commerce Department. Well, kind of hard now, but because the Commerce Department have staff that work in all the commercial districts in the city.
Okay.
And they have divided them by the areas of the city. So they could be helpful. There's a young lady named Naja Sabor who is heading up that division.
Okay.
And I think what you did, I agree with Hans, is just tremendous. And I commend you.
Oh, thank you.
For taking this as initiative. But to move it further, I think that Commerce could be very helpful to you and would be very appreciated for your help.
Okay. Naja Sabor, I'll reach out to her. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sean, you had a question?
Yes. For first of all, good really a excellent job, but do we know about how many stores have been broken into or people still look from?
We don't necessarily have any data as to, as far as how many businesses in Philly, had experienced shoplifting. We just, saw the information that was put out in the media and, talked to some business owners directly about just how the business community in general was, confused about the policy, didn't know what they were supposed to do. Do we still call? Is it worth calling? So we just responded from that point of view, just to prevent someone from not understanding that the policy is no longer in effect and, to respond appropriately.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
just one more thing. Where is Marcel at?
So Sean, as I referenced, we had some layoffs. And that was one of the positions that we lost.
Okay.
Great. Any other questions? Ben?
If there are no other questions, I think we can thank Talia for that and move along to the public comment portion of our meeting. This is the time of the meeting when if any members of the public wish to make any comments or ask any questions, we are available. Although I don't see that many folks who aren't staff or commission. So maybe we don't have any tonight. Any other questions or comments from staff or commissioners? All right. Well, with that, I think we can conclude. Our next meeting is scheduled for June 15th, again at 6 p.m. By Zoom. So we will see you then. And in the meantime, thank you, Danny, for emceeing tonight. And we will adjourn.
It looks like Bilal had one last question, I think.
Bilal, and it looks like BB also.
He probably has a procedural issue that we have to have a motion.
Okay.
As our attorney.
That was the least of it. I just need to know for minutes if there is a written agenda. I didn't get it. And then also if anyone is not excused in terms of the absences. I wasn't on for the roll call.
Okay, so I'll tell you, the people missing tonight, I don't know whether anybody said in advance they would miss it, are Mujib Chowdhury and Michael Raming. I believe everybody else is here.
Okay, and I know Rhonda is excused. Did anybody hear from?
Sorry, yes, Rhonda, of course, was excused, yes.
Hans, did you hear from anyone?
I wouldn't know, but Danny, did you? Oh, I did not. Danny, did you?
Nope.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
And agenda, Ron. Sorry about that. Maybe I.
Oh, if you can send it, that would be great, and then I'll do them.
Bilal, did you have something?
Yeah, I just have one quick comment that we could actually take up in our June meeting. I have seen over the last couple of days, social media, at least 4 incidents with police and young males in different cities. As a person who grew up in the 60s and 70s, or really the 60s, I see shades of possibility of civil disobedience this summer. And I think as a commission, we should consider maybe having Hans, and I talked to Hans about that. Our June meeting is possible, Commissioner Outlaw, as part of our meeting, or a separate meeting with the commissioner. There's a possibility that Philadelphia could be a city that I believe can explode. And I know there's other cities already that they have confronted. And in one city in particular in Florida, they actually threw bottles and bricks and stuff at police, and the police retreated because it was almost 3,000 young males and women in the streets. And it was also multiracial. They were in the streets. The police actually had to retreat from the incident. They were having a big block party. The police came and there was some words exchanged and it was an incident. So, and the police had to retreat because they didn't have the manpower to deal with responding. Let me just say that so this is now in May. The weather's going, as soon as it gets hotter and hotter with the tension in the cities from the epidemic, and there's also other issues. I just think that we need to have that discussion with the commissioner and find out what the policies are going to be for the commissioner and the city of Philadelphia if something happens, unfortunately, during the summer months.
So I think that
something to think about.
Yeah, I think that we can That sounds like a very deep conversation. I think that we can request a commission meeting with the commissioner. In other words, a closed meeting with the commissioner. So she can meet you all, and that we can have some we can put together some conversations. So I think what we'll do is, and Sean, we'll get to you, is we'll circulate an email to try and create an agenda, a proposed agenda, and so we can organize the, I guess, 9 commissioners and their different agenda items, and then send a proposed commissioner to the, proposed agenda to the commissioner, and see about her availability for a meeting. I do think that it is worthwhile for Commissioner Outlaw to get to know everyone who's part of the commission and understand each of your priorities. So I will work on that and report back, and you will hear from me or Danny about any agenda items that you might want to see on the agenda, with the understanding that hopefully we'll have some overlapping agenda items and we can try and synthesize them as much as possible. So thank you for that recommendation, Bilal. I'll definitely follow up with everybody on that. Is there a question from Sean, I think, or okay? Sean, you're unmuted. Nope, now you're back. Danny's messing with you.
Sorry.
Good. No.
You're good.
Yeah, like I agree with Bilal. Like that's a real important conversations that we got to have. Like, what would the summer look like, and so what can we do as a commitment to nip this in the bud before this thing is full?
Yeah.
And a other thing, I just want to bring up. I've been seeing a lot of some brutalities on news, on social media, all about when it comes to social discipline. So we had to talk about that too, like what is enforcing the rule, but what is also overstepping boundary because you don't have on a mask.
Yeah, that could certainly be one of the agenda items, and I think I know what you're referring to. I guess I want to highlight that today George presented on his program that's meant to increase safety, increase buy-in from young people or just people in the community, and help everybody help folks in communities find ways to reduce violence internally. And so that is a program that, while he admits is a police partnership to the extent possible, is not led by the police. And I think that that's an acknowledgement that we all need to rethink how much we rely on police, how much we look at them to solve problems, and how much they can prevent things. And so we're looking at, as Bilal said, a summer that is going to be influenced, and maybe for more than just a summer, influenced by budget cuts that reduce services like swimming pools, like programming, and that keep people, that keep young people occupied. And so I'm mentioning all that to be mindful of the fact that the Police Advisory Commission, I think that one thing that I know we all agree on is that the police are not the solution to everything, and also not the cause for everything. And we need to figure out, as we start to have a conversation about addressing issues that may be coming, that conversation needs to include solutions that are not within the police department.
All right. Well, Sean has one more thing, I believe.
Should be unmuted, Sean.
So, Hodge, do you think can we try to have a in-person meeting in June? Cause this Zoom thing, I am over this.
Well, let me tell you, Sean, I was complaining earlier. I have sat in this chair in my home in front of a computer screen far too much. So I echo that. And I'm over the Zoom, the Teams, the WebEx, and the Google Hangouts. All of them can go. That said, I don't know what the commissioner's comfort level is going to be. I can't speak for her for that. And I don't even know what the rules are going to be in June. So I hope so, but I don't know.
All
right. Thank you. Before we adjourn, I just want to also, again, thank you, Corporal Beard, for spending this time with us today. It was an amazing presentation, and I really appreciate your sticking around for the entirety of the meeting. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Seconded?
So move.
You can thumbs up me for seconding. All right. Motion is granted. And thanks, everyone. See you next time, June 15th.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night.